Wonder, curiosity, connection. Where will your adventures take you? I'm Dr. Diane, and thank you for joining me on today's episode of Adventures in Learning. Hi, welcome to the Adventures in Learning podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Diane. Happy New Year. Today, we get to talk to an incredible teaching artist who also happens to be a mime. His name is Jef Lambdin, and I am so excited for you to get to meet him. I had the privilege of being in his workshop in North Carolina last year, and I have to tell you, it was one of my favorite workshops at the North Carolina Science Teachers Association. You are in for such a treat. Jef, welcome to the program.
Well, thank you, Doc. It's good to see you and all of your viewers.
I am so glad you're with us today. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. That's the appropriate phrase for right now.
It is. And I wanted to start by sort of letting them get a sense of who you are. Can you talk a little bit about your adventures in learning? I know that you're a teaching artist and a mime. How did you get to this point?
I started out studying mime. And after I studied mime for several years, we started a mime troupe in North Carolina. And we toured throughout the Southeast, North Carolina first, then the Southeast, then the nation. And we performed for everybody. We performed for daycare centers. We performed for people at Lincoln Center. We performed at hospitals and prisons and art centers all over. And so by creating our own material, we got to see a lot of audiences. Along the way, one day when we were doing school shows, the principal came up after the show and said, "Would you guys be interested in teaching a couple workshops with some of the classes when you were done?" We said, "Sure." So we did some mime classes that day and realized that the educational component was something we could add to our work. And so we did. We offered it whenever we did school shows to also do workshops. And that was just doing mime, performing mime and doing mime. So it was reinforcing what they saw. About 20 years ago, after I left the mime troupe for a while, we closed down the mime troupe in 93. And then about 20 years ago, around the turn of the century, I was still doing schoolwork, still performing and still doing mime workshops. And I also teach circus arts workshops because I juggle, I balance plates. And so I teach the kids how to do that as well. That's a physics lesson, by the way. And one day I got a call from a school that wanted me to do a lengthy residency and to parallel the mime with the English language arts standards. And I said, "What's a standard?" Right.
Of course.
I had no clue. But they brought me up to speed that's standards are important. And so I did that workshop and somebody else heard that I had done that and asked for something similar. And so I realized I needed to bone up on this edu-speak if I was going to do this. And that's how it grew. I started studying the standards and how what I did matched up with them. And then as that word got out, I was asked to do a whole lot of residencies that parallel different things. When I do a mask theater residency, the kids make masks, and I have masks from around the world, and we study them and how they are used and where they are used today. This isn't ancient history. All that's being used today, and I think it's a real good parallel to the book learning they do. And so the mime, I usually parallel English language arts, and the circus arts, I parallel. It fits right in with PE standards, and it fits right in with science standards. An object at rest.
I was going to say, there's a lot of physics in the circus.
That's right. And so along the way, in North Carolina, we have an education coordinator at the State Arts Council, and she was badgering me to get credentials. She said, "Jef, you're doing this, but you've got to have credentials." I said, "Why?" She said, "So I can say you have them." So I did work with one organization that didn't really fit, but then I went to the folks at Lincoln Center, and it was a real nice fit. I love the philosophy of Maxine Greene and how they base all of their arts ed on that. And so I studied with them about being a teaching artist. And so now this is what I do when I'm not performing.
So let's talk a little bit about Lincoln Center. What were some of the takeaways from that? What were the things that made that experience so unique?
The thing I liked about the Lincoln Center approach is they start with art. Every educational moment that I create, it refers to or jumps off of a performance that they will see or have seen. And that makes perfect sense to me. It's not amorphous art form. It is an art experience. And that to me is what I like the best.
Well, and I love the fact that you use the word experience, because I know for me, when I'm doing professional development with teachers, I really try to shy away from the word activity because to me, activity is a standalone thing and it's not hooked in and connected to the world around you, to something that you're going to remember. And so I love that notion of helping to create experiences.
Well, I hadn't thought of it that way, but that's great.
So, when you're doing professional development or you're doing your workshops, what are some of the experiences that you're offering or the ways that you set things up?
Well, of course, it depends on the subject matter. The folks at the conference, the science conference, wanted something about that visual art. They felt like the science teachers could grok that a lot more clearly. And so I thought about all the ones, and I remembered that the Getty Museum had prints that that they let you use, and so that's what we did. I started with those, um, and then used that. And as you noticed, when we went outside to let the sun do its work, everybody was having such a blast because it was the first time they'd been out of that conference center in
In
three
3 days.
right. And it was and I'm going to shame the devil and tell the truth. When we met at the pre-conference dinner that was at Pilot
Pilot
Mountain
Mountain.
State Park, that was an eye opener for me to be outdoors. And they didn't know it. They were doing arts integration and not knowing when we were doing the part about the lines, looking at the geological formations.
Yes.
I thought that was fabulous, and they didn't even know what they were doing. They were doing science.
Well, and I
And
found myself thinking, especially after I took your workshop, that you could take what they were doing in terms of the lines and the angles of the rocks and then connect it to the poetry
right,
and to the
right,
art.
right. You could, and it's a visual art standard line, right? And that's one of the beautiful things. And then that was the cute thing. And I told them, you don't even know what you're doing, but this is what you're doing very well. As we, because we had that great time to chat with them,
Yes.
and that was beautiful. I like that.
I think
But
more conferences need experiences like that. That
I
was
agree. I would, and they used to happen. We used to go to an arts conference, and we would have an art event as a part of it, either going to a gallery or some. And that's as prices have gotten higher and et cetera, and then at COVID we weren't even allowed to be there. We had to
right.
do it virtually. But I really like that. That I think I live better with those experiences.
I agree. So
And
I
then
interrupted you. We were talking about experiences.
that's right. When I work on mime and teachers, I get them to understand that the children already know this. We have so many gestures that we use every day, and the kids know them flat out. And they also know about expression because they can do that without thinking. They haven't been trod upon to not express anymore. And so one of the beautiful things about teaching mime is Susie, who's usually very good at writing and reading and all of this thing, it's hard for her to move and express. But Zeke, who is not a good writer and he's not a good listener and but he's a physical learner, he's jumping right in, and I'm praising him, and Susie's looking at Zeke and going, he's doing that real well, you know. And I think it's a leveler that we all can because by experience it and seeing it, it becomes a part of the classroom atmosphere or I'm sure there's a word for it, but
Well, it's your classroom culture, and you're
culture.
really you're figuring out, I think, how to highlight people's strengths. That
Yeah,
we all have strengths, and so
yeah,
they may be in different fields, but we can
right.
play those up.
And teachers don't come by this from their education. And my joke with the teachers is, if they had taught you these skills in college, I would be out of a job.
I like that. That's a good point.
You know, but they didn't, and they don't, because those teachers, they have things they have to get done, and none of it has to do with um, how do you how do you get the information across in a way that's appealing, exciting, and wonderful for the child. That's what I see is missing in pre-service education, and
Yes.
I said that live.
Nope. And I agree with you that I call it showtime. That's my informal
Okay,
museum education coming in.
yeah,
But it is the showtime piece. It's the how do you hook your audience, because your students are an audience and
amen,
they're co-creating the material with you. So how do you
amen,
hook them and get them involved?
amen. And so I try to model that, and then the when I'm working with teachers and when I teach a lesson, well, you experienced it. I stop and say, what do you want to know? What did I just do? As the teacher in the room right now, you're teachers and should be analyzing what I'm doing from all of those perspectives. And that's, I think, is refreshing to them, because most of their professional developments are, you must do it this way. You must learn this now because we're changing all the text to work this way. And this is the way you have to do it. And I've said enough.
No, but I totally get where you're coming from, because I know, having traveled the country, one of the things I'm hearing from teachers is that professional development is boring.
Yeah,
That, you sit there and you're multitasking, just praying for that moment that you get out. And I'm on a mission to sort of prove to them that it doesn't have to be, but that comes with what you're talking about. It's teaching the way that we want to be taught as adults, but
right,
also the way that kids want to be taught. And so
right.
it is finding that way that you can connect and be
Yeah.
engaging.
Well, and I'll say this. Do you know the writings of Eric Booth?
Yes.
Okay. Eric has a new book out, and one of the things that I hadn't thought about a lot, but I've been thinking about a lot because this stimulated me. He says, 80% of your work is you,
Yep.
and I'm a performer, right? And so, of course, it makes sense to me that my classes, I have, they have a beginning, middle, and end, and we have rising action, and what I want them to get, and what they can get ancillarily on their own, and what they might do later. That's all. That's the job of a playwright and a dramaturg, and I bring it to the classroom. And so I've been thinking about that a lot because of what Eric. He's so way smarter than me. He's talking
We
about
need
all that
people
stuff.
who are way smarter than us. That's how we
That's right.
learn.
That's right. That's right. But I've been thinking about that because I'm in the middle of reading his latest book. So
Well,
I
and I like that. I like the idea that as performers, we come to professional development with that idea of beginning, middle, and end. And teachers have the capacity to be performers as well. They just need the support and the encouragement to not be afraid to do it.
and if I may, they need to know that it's not another add-on like this
Yes.
language. It is how you do it. It's the basis. It's substantive. And if they start to adopt these methods, then they will truly see these methods in their planning.
Yes.
It's got to be intentional, and maybe it's just a little at a time. And I understand that because some of these teachers have been teaching since I was born, and
Right.
and they have their way, and that's good. If it works for them. But if we can encourage them to start to make choices so that they utilize and intentionally utilize those aspects of teaching, I think we're affecting the teaching practice.
So I like the idea that you just talked about, maybe you start small with a couple of things and you build it
Oh
into
yeah,
your practice. If you were to sit down with a teacher who wants to be more intentional and wants to build more of these connections and the arts and the performance aspect in, where would you tell them to start, or how would you help them get started?
It'll come as no surprise that I would tell them to start letting the children get up out of their seats. That's the very first thing. And many teachers and young ones especially are very afraid of that because of the chaos.
Yep.
Right? I'll say it out loud. Yes, it's chaotic. However, if students learn that when they get out of their seat, there are expectations, then over time they accept those. It's like so anyway, to get the kids out of their seats and to act things out, whether it's doing a tableau about something you're reading, or asking them to get up and try to show the difference between a solid, a liquid, and a gas with their body.
Yeah. Are you tired of same old professional development experiences? Check out what recent workshop participants have to say about doing a workshop with Dr. Diane's Adventures in Learning. Great hands-on session that included real ideas to incorporate in the classroom. Wonderful. Lots of great ideas and fun science experiments. It was great to be able to see how to make connections between the stories and science. If you are looking to raise your game and have a professional development experience that will leave your educators feeling rejuvenated and ready to directly apply ideas into their classrooms, reach out to Dr. Diane's Adventures in Learning. We offer half and full day workshops that examine ways to build connections between multicultural picture books and STEM experiences for gains across the curriculum. All programs can be tailored to your specific needs, so find out what audiences across the country have been experiencing. Check out Dr. Diane's Adventures in Learning at www.drdianeadventures.com. We hope to be in your school soon. But there are so many cool science demonstrations we can do that involve the kids and are hands-on. And so find a few of those, build those into what you're doing. I love with the 5 senses with kids. This is a super simple thing teachers can start with. Pick a page in your favorite picture book. As you're reading the picture book to the kids, share the picture book, stop, and then have them act out sound story a particular page. What sounds do you hear? Read those different things. You're the bird, you're the worm, you're the tree, you're the wind.
Right.
And, don't be afraid of a little controlled chaos.
Right. Well, and also talking about sounds, I advocate, as you saw, going outside, leaving the classroom. And one of the things that children I've found love to do is it's a simple exercise, a sound map, where you sit and you make a circle in the middle, and that's you. And every time you hear something, you have to make a visual representation on your piece of paper in the direction it was. Ooh. So it's front over side. And so the children are making these, and it can be a truck, it can be a bird, it can be the wind in the tree, it can be a cowbell 6 fields over that they can hear. But they end up with this little map of little figures, and then we turn that map into a piece of visual art using visual art standards. Now they've got that marks anyway, but it's about listening, because that's another simple thing that the kids need to relearn, because they're not trained to listen; they're told to listen.
Observing is another one of those.
Yep.
And what I would do with really small children, preschoolers, is we would take a hula hoop and we would go outside and put the hula hoop down on the grass, and they'd have a microscope. And they were observing what they could see within the realm of that hula hoop. Yeah. And we were making a list of all the things and, able to create our own interactive writing based on what they saw.
Perfect. And in observation, whether it's visual, auditory, tactile, using, how would I say it? An archivist would say that you were using documents that were first person,
Yes.
right? And we forget that sometimes because a lot of the teaching techniques that teachers are taught in colleges are, especially now with keyboarding, don't get me started, um, is it's already transposed and
Right.
rather than first person.
And I do think we need that first person
Yeah,
observation. You need the
yeah,
ability to see, to know, to connect.
right. Well, you've got to be able to observe before you can analyze.
Yes.
And that whole pyramid of all the things you should be able to do and when you should be able to do them. Um, it, until you can observe, you can't do anything.
And I love the fact you've referenced this a few times that you're able to take the arts and connect them into STEAM, to the science,
Oh,
technology, engineering, arts, and math.
oh yeah.
Um, can you give an example of some of the ways that you like to do that?
Okay. Like one that I do when I'm asked in science class, just physicalizing things, and what's one of my favorites. Like I said, physicalize a solid becoming liquid, and a liquid becoming a gas, and doing that. That's one that I really like. Anytime I have the kids physicalize the water cycle, how do you show the evaporation? I mean, show it to me. Don't tell me
Right.
about it. Show it to me. What does it look like? What does it feel like? What does it taste like when they're doing it? Um, Also, having them actually observe an animal moving
Yes.
and then describing it and then taking it on rather than move like a monkey. And they have these classic things that they would do. I said, well, wait a second. Let's look at a monkey. And I have videos of them, and they go, oh. I said, see if you can copy the way the monkey is moving, and then their vocabulary broadens, and it starts with their physical, because physical movement is a vocabulary that they can then translate into words, and then their verbal vocabulary is expanded. So that's another thing I like to do. Um, I One of my very favorite exercises, and this one was one I did early on, and it really got me hooked in trying to invent things that were rigorous. It's called Monkeys in the Rainforest, and I teach them about 5 different kinds of monkeys that are in the rainforest, and they each choose their own, which one they're going to be, and they're in their little tribes, right? All the 5 tribes
Uh-huh.
of that kind of monkey, and we start. And what I do is I take all the desks and all the tables in the room and I push them together, and that's where they go to sleep every night. And so they actually are climbing up and they all go to sleep. And then when they're out during the day, they're out around the room and they're with their little tribes and they're eating and they know what they're supposed to be finding. And so they're doing their research visually. And I take away some of the chairs and tables. So when they go back at night, there's less each time. And by the fourth or fifth time, there's not enough room for everybody. So how do you help your tribe? How do you help each other? And it really is emotional for the children when they see a child that there's no room for, and what do they have to do? And then we talk about, what's happening to the rainforest, but we don't talk about it until we've done it.
So you're internalizing it first, you're developing that emotional connection, and then you can
Exactly.
add in the layers of content.
Exactly. And they see it and feel it. It's not, I mean, it's not rhetorical. You know, it's not imaginary. It's not fantastic. Sam can't get up here until we reach over. We're going to grab him. We're going to hold him on the desk because we want our whole family to be here. Right.
Love that.
And um, by adding the emotional content of acting to the exercise, which is what I've done, it really brings home what we're talking about when we lose an acre of rainforest.
And that's a hard concept without
Yep,
adding that in.
yep. And running water is another one. And I mean, a lot of people do this, I assume, but I have them, if we talk about turning on the water and brushing our teeth and turning on the water and washing our hands, and do they ever just leave the water on? And the water's running. So I have, I mime brushing my teeth, and I say, you have to run anytime I turn the faucets on. So the whole class is running, right? And I turn on the faucets and I get my toothpaste and they're running. And I open up the tube and they're running. And they're saying, Mr. Jed, we're still running. I go, oh, really? I'm brushing my teeth. And so by the end, I go, so how was it to be running water while I was doing it? They said, well, you were wasting us. And they're telling me,
I love it.
and it's just physicalizing it. And that's the way I look at it. But it does, again, by acting it out, you bring the point home.
Yeah.
And
I was
maybe
thinking as you were talking that you could do that with polar bears and the disappearing sea ice.
yeah.
That might be a really powerful way to help kids understand what the Arctic is going through right
And
now.
there's a book that I use, Dog on Ice, I think it's called. And it's a true story that it happened in Finland or Sweden, up in Scandinavia somewhere, where a dog ended up on an ice floe by accident. And the kids on this watched the dog floating by, and how they mobilized the people to save the dog. And they had a ship that they directed a ship to go and get the dog, and then the dog was the mascot of the ship. And I use that for them. I have them imagine that they are dog on the ice, and I give them writing prompts. I wish, I feel, I would really like, and once we've read through the story and then I have them act it out, then they're writing in the first person, being the dog, and it would just be another leap to be a polar bear.
I love that. Are there
So
other books that you like to use?
I
You've hit
like to
sort of
use
my passion.
I like to use Frog and Toad books because they are always so wonderful. I like there's a book called Elbert's Bad Word.
I know that one.
Okay, I like that one. Stregonona with the pasta pot that
Yep.
just keeps making pasta and pasta and pasta. I love that one. That Tommy DePaolo. Those off the top of my head, those are the ones that come right up to the top.
Because that's one of the things that I love to do with teachers is to help them find, multicultural picture books that you can connect to these things
Oh
that
yeah.
you're doing. And so I love the fact that you're also tying in literature as you're doing your work. I
Oh
think
yeah.
that's really cool.
Well, the Ruby Bridges. I had teachers. I got an excerpt from one of the stories about Ruby Bridges, and they acted it out, and there were, some of them were using harsh words, yelling them at Ruby as she went by, and so that was a real internally difficult for them because they were playing out of type. And when I do professional developments, I need them to know that that's a good thing. That's how, I know not all schools can talk about social emotional learning anymore, but there are whole curricula that we're supposed to be teaching about. You just got to call it something else.
Exactly.
But walking in someone else's shoes is a big part of empathy.
Absolutely. And empathy to me is one of the biggest things that we as a country need to work on in terms
Right.
of
Whether
being
it's with
able
a
to help
frog or
each
with
other.
Ruby Bridges or, or anything. But yeah.
Yeah, and I had noticed that you are doing work with social emotional learning or character development
Oh,
or
yeah.
empathy building, whatever we want to call it at this point. It's all the same stuff. How do you work that into your into the work that you do?
Okay. I actually taught a workshop and people would ask me to teach it. And I did it a lot in South Carolina and North Carolina. I worked with the drama teachers in North Carolina, but saying you cannot do an art lesson without touching on social more. You can't.
Right.
You can't. It can't be done. And the way that I did it was I took the social emotional a lot of the ideas that they list on a lot of the websites about these are things that show this, these are things that show this, and I made 2 pages front and back, and so we would do an exercise. Say we did an exercise about using a sculptural work created by an African American artist, and they take the pose of the sculpture and then come up with lines for it and make a script. Okay, that's a playwriting exercise. And then I say, okay, look at your sheets. What part of what social emotional axioms did we touch upon? They go, well, this one and this one, and I say you can't do it. You can't. And I do another exercise where they're collaborating. It's called the Giant's House, and where they're in a group. Each team is in a group, and they're walking in a circle. And I say stop, and I tell them an item in the giant's house that they must create with their bodies. And it's everything from a chair to a harp to a bed to a bowl of cereal. And they have to, with their bodies, and they have to work on stillness. So there's a lot of collaboration involved. And when I do it with children, I do it before I have them collaborate creating a mime piece. I say, these are the skills that you need, and have them tell me what skills did you bring to this to achieve this. And that's important, I think.
And what a great way to sort of start with something concrete that
Yes.
they're creating, and then
Yes.
build it out, because they're going to take responsibility for creating an entire skit.
Exactly. And we have to remember that we cannot assess what we don't teach. So I get a little heebie-jeebie when a teacher says, make a tableau, and it's a French word, it's short for tableau vivant. It really is. I mean, theater companies that used to do it used to spend weeks creating them, and then they would perform them. And so when I teach children about tableau, I never use the word. I talk about stillness, and then pictures, and being a part of a picture. And then maybe after we've done it for a couple of days, they say, this has an official name. Because again, by naming it with society's name for it, it removes it from first person.
And you want it to start as a first person experience. Hey, early childhood and elementary school teachers and librarians. Are you looking for ways to spice up your curriculum, build connections with engaged STEAM learners, and introduce multicultural versions of fairy tales and folk literature? If so, head over to drdianeadventures.com and check out our on-demand virtual course. Beyond Ever After STEAM on-demand virtual course allows you to work at your own pace and learn how to build these STEM connections through multicultural fairy tales and folk literature. You'll receive professional development credits after you complete this high-energy 3-hour on-demand course produced with Steve Spangler, Inc. As a bonus, you're going to receive a PDF that's filled with curriculum connections and program ideas you can put to work immediately in your early childhood, elementary, or library setting. Discounts are available for group purchases, plus you get special pricing when you purchase it as part of a regular professional development workshop. So head on over to drdianeadventures.com and get started on your own Beyond Ever After experience.
Right.
So you've had a chance to see education from many different vantage points over the last 25, 30 years or so. Maybe a little bit longer than that. What are some of the biggest changes you've seen? And second with that is, what are some of your hopes for education based on what you see as you travel and you teach?
Okay. If I was king and I got to say class size, the size of the group that you're teaching must be smaller. The size of the schools must be to scale for the size of those classes. I'm sorry, when I go into a warehouse high school and there are 5,000 kids and each hallway is its own school or learning environment, I'm not so sure that the young people in that atmosphere come away with what I did. There were 800 people in my high school, total.
Right.
Total. And I knew their mothers, I knew their parents. And we've gotten away from that. And I understand the California model and why we do it and this and that. Sometimes they do it just to have a good football team. I'm sorry. And if I was king, I would stop that and I would go back to smaller, well appointed with wasting all the space to have an auditorium and
Yeah.
science labs, actual labs with sinks and faucets, and so that you didn't worry about burning down the bookshelf with the Bunsen burner. I know that they consider that a waste of space now, but I don't think so. I
Right.
think that having appropriate learning environments is really important. Multi-purpose rooms. I, I mean, you're going to eat there, and then they're going to open up a sliding panel, and you're going to watch a show. I'm sorry. It's
Well, and it also limits the opportunities to bring in the arts because
yeah,
you're having to basically build that around all
right.
of the lunch periods.
Correct. Correct. Anyway, but if I was king of the universe, it'd be small class size, small school size, and appropriate learning environments. That's the way I'd say it. And we're building a school here in Robeson County where I live, and it's not going to have any of that. It's a brand new middle school, and they're going to have thousands of kids, and the stage is going to be at the end of the gym, and that's okay. At least it's there.
At least they have a
At
stage, but
least it's
yeah.
there. But I don't want to say at least it's
No,
there.
I agree with you. I'm in
So
Winchester, Virginia, and they're doing renovations at the high school my girls went to.
yeah,
And as they've done the renovations, the arts department yet again wasn't also thought. They weren't considered part of the primary scope of things. And so a lot of the emphasis went to athletics and surprise. And there's nothing wrong with athletics. Athletics can be a great thing, but you need to be able to embrace all of these intelligences. And not every kid is going to go through their high school experience as a
amen,
football player.
amen, amen. And so, if I was king of the universe, those are the educational reforms that I would insist upon.
I like that. So, last question for you for today. What brings you hope?
The kids, the kids. Through COVID, when I tried what I did on Zoom with kids, and I didn't like it, but they were juiced. But trying to assess 34 little boxes on my screen here was beyond me. And I realized really early on, if I can't assess the class, I can't be teaching it. And I know I disappointed a lot of people because I just said, I can't do it. And but but the young people have come back from that. And yes, we have all of the data showing that my brother, for instance, teaches at a university. He teaches remedial English for entering freshmen. And he said, Jeff, our classes quintupled at the end of COVID because kids couldn't write at a college level, coming out of high school, having their diploma in their hand. Um, but they're still trying. They're not discouraged. That's my point. The
Right.
kids give me hope. When I walk into a classroom and even before, when I'm walking down the hall and the kids don't know I'm watching, and one of them's going like this from the day before, right? Practicing their mime, then I have hope. They're listening, they're being encouraged, they're playing. That's the other part of the educational question that we forget sometimes. And you've said this yourself in so many words. It's got to be playful,
Mhm.
or because if it's tedious and boring, it's not going to be absorbed.
Well, and
So
that's my hope for the new year for so many of our teachers and students is that
yeah,
they get the tools they need to be able to have playful and
right,
enjoyable learning.
right, right. And so it's the kids. And I know, and okay, I can say all this because I'm a gypsy killer. I come into your school for X number of weeks and I do my work and I leave. I am not a day to day, 180 days of the year with a certain things that I have to get done. Yes, I have certain things I have to get done, but not over the scope of 56 weeks, 52 weeks. How many weeks are there?
52.
Yeah. And I really respect them. I mean, it takes different kinds of people to do different things. And I really respect and love those teachers that I see in there day in and day out, trying to find a way to make all this happen. with all the gobbledygook that they have to do. I mean, when
Yes.
teachers today have so much paperwork that they don't give homework. I mean,
Right. Well, they're being given so many outside tasks to
exactly,
layer onto teaching.
exactly.
And
And
so if we can
I'm
help them,
yeah,
if we can help make it simpler,
yes,
help them make it fun again. I think
yeah,
that's where the kind of
yeah.
professional development, the kind of work that we do.
Well, I bet you do that with your professional development work. You try to show them
Yes, look for ways to make it fun and enjoyable and accomplish all of these different
all of the things.
things so that we make it efficient. You can do all of these things. You can connect literature and STEAM, and you can still cover your standards.
Right, both ends. And
And
everybody's happier and learning more. Now, okay, there was one more thing I just remembered. I would remove electronic learning from anybody younger than high school. And that's because of all the studies. The studies show that two-dimensional learning and keyboarding uses so much less of our brain. And that'd be you were asking, I was thinking that just came cascading on me. Using a stylus, a pencil, or a pen uses 400% more of your brain than using your fingers on a keypad. So why don't we write?
well, and we need to write. We need to be able to get our hands dirty, and we
Yeah.
need to be able to actually shape and mold and experiment as we're building.
Yes. Yes. Amen.
Well, I think you and I should just become the new king and queen of the universe.
Okay. Okay. But
God,
yeah. So then what do we do with all those politicians in our way, right?
exactly. We'll figure it out.
Okay. Well,
Well,
thanks for
Jef
having me.
Lambdin, thank you so much for being a guest on the Adventures in Learning podcast. I'm going to include your contact information in the show notes so that people can follow you and
Please
hopefully
do.
bring you to their school.
Yeah.
You've been listening to the Adventures in Learning podcast with your host, Dr. Diane. If you like what you're hearing, please subscribe, download, and let us know what you think, and please tell a friend. If you want the full show notes and the pictures, please go to drdianeadventures.com. We look forward to you joining us on our next adventure.